Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent Carrie Nuckolls of Century 21 First Group based out of Sulphur Springs, Texas. Carrie has been a realtor with Century 21 First Group since 2003 and is passionate about helping people move about. Carrie has qualified for the coveted Centurion Award based on her production for 7 years in a row. The last 3 included the President's Award. She has also received the Pinnacle Award, which includes quality service, her most coveted award personally. And last year, Carrie was invited to speak to her peers at the invitation-only top agent retreat for Century 21 Corporate on her top 10 tips for becoming your best. All right, with all that said, Carrie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Keith. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here today, Carrie. And I guess if we could start for our listeners, what led you into real estate? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or did you maybe stumble into it?
Well, I would say life probably led me, and ultimately, I believe the Lord did. For some people that may sound cliche, but I originally, as I was graduating high school, wanted to be a psychology major, and I always laugh about that now because while I did not major in psychology, there is a ton of psychology that I use every day in real estate. So I actually did a lot of sales in my career, and then at a point in my life, I'd recently had my son and was kind of staying at home, but starting to look for something I could do that was flexible, or so I thought, and that's kind of where real estate happened, essentially. My mentor, the lady who she's still my owner today of the company, owner and broker, I ran into her. I was going to looked at buying a duplex, and we had this 45-minute conversation, and next thing you know, I was online signing up to get my real estate license. So that's basically it.
Excellent. And do you think you could talk about what personal attributes, traits, or qualities have most contributed to the success that you've had in real estate?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny, I like to tell people, I've been selling real estate now for 13 years, and I feel like I've grown up through real estate in a lot of ways, and it has taught me a lot of things about myself and taught me a lot about who I want to be, not only as a professional, but as a person. And so the things that I believe have contributed to my success is definitely integrity. Determination is another one, and perseverance, which are similar but different. And then care, just being a caring person in real estate. In order to be truly successful, you have to care about people. And then optimism. I am really an eternal optimist. My husband often likes to say that I talk with hearts and flowers coming out of my mouth. He's very black and white, but I really, really believe that having an optimistic outlook is a big key to part of my success.
And do you think you could give our listeners an example of when these traits have played a role in your path towards success? Yes.
So for me, there was kind of this turning point. I mentioned having a young child and wanting something that was flexible, and I like to tell the story where I got my real estate license, and my son was in what they call Mother's Day Out, 2 days a week, and so I, in my mind, said, well, I'm going to work and sell real estate on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 3 while he's at Mother's Day Out. And to me, that just made perfect sense because everybody kind of thinks that real estate is super flexible. And for some people, it can be, depending on the amount of volume you do. But so that's what I went into it with. And, you don't get a paycheck unless you sell something. So the first time somebody called me on a Wednesday and wanted to see a house, of course, I went and showed him the house. But I'd kind of bumped along like that for a few years, and I was doing okay. I was contributing to our family's household. I wouldn't say I was necessarily making a living at that point. And real estate with I would imagine, a lot of sales jobs, that are, commission only based, it's a roller coaster. It's all or nothing, it seems like. So you may not close anything for a month or two, and then all of a sudden you're closing 5 or 10. And so that's a hard way to live when you want to try and have a dependable income. And so what happened when I say I had a shift is I ended up getting a divorce. And for anybody that's ever been through a divorce, they're almost always ugly and take a lot out of you. And so for me in that moment, or season, I should say, of my life, I had to kind of decide, who do I really want to be, and how do I want to let this affect myself personally, and then what can I do to kind of rise up and be the best realtor? If I've chosen to be a realtor, then what can I do to be the best realtor that I can be? And I really looked at this guy that locally was number one in everything. I mean, if anything came up on the market and it was his sign in the yard, you just knew that it was because somebody had said to, this person, oh, you've got to call so-and-so. He's the best. And so I really kind of started shifting out of my divorce and kind of feeling like struggling with some self-doubt and insecurity issues through that. I really started focusing on being the best I could be and overcoming. And so I kind of used him almost as a target, and I looked at what he did and how he did it, and began to determine that there were a lot of things I could offer as a level of service and marketing, because when I say you've got to be your best, it's not just to win an award or just to make the most money or just to sell the most houses. It's actually being the best in your profession. So how can you offer the best service and the most marketing and exposure? In real estate, those are the things that are important, so that buyers will come and buy houses, or that they will see you as somebody that does care about them, that is passionate, and does have tenacity and won't give up until you find them the perfect home or land or whatever they need for their family. So for me, that's how kind of I say I grew up in real estate, is these traits played a role in my path towards success as a growth process, as being intentional about who I wanted to be and how I wanted to attack that. And when I really began to focus on being my best by taking care of people and offering the greatest service, that's when I really began to see my real estate numbers and career rise.
Excellent. And Carrie, obviously, you kind of talked about some of the adversities and trials that you walked through, obviously, on this path. And I guess, what kept you going despite these obstacles? Why didn't you give up? I mean, you were obviously faced with a lot of different things, like you said. So what was your driving force? I
would have to say 3 things in a way. My husband, I mentioned he's black and white, so he's just like this solid, steadfast, steady as a rock kind of person, and nothing really bounces off of him. So if you can imagine like that flat line. And then me, my anxiety, so I'm bouncing off of this flat line that he is. And he's always encouraged me. He's always supported me. I mean, if I had to show all day long or 2 days in a row, he'll do laundry. He'll keep the kids fed, and he'll rub my feet when I get home. I mean, whatever that, like, truly, that true definition of a helpmate within a marriage, he has been that always. And a lot of times even just encouraging with his words. I'd say that more than anything. And then my anxiety, I mentioned kind of the roller coaster of real estate and some of that. And, and when it's low, it can be low. And so learning for realtors that may be listening and trying to glean something, especially younger ones in the business, but, learning that when that deal that you worked so hard on or just something doesn't pan out or they don't pick you, they don't list with you, and you just thought you had it in the bag, or, learning that that's okay, that there's enough to go around for everybody, and that I believe, and the third thing is the Lord, for me, that God's going to give you what he wants you to have, because there is enough to go around for everybody. And so I would say those three components, I talk about my anxiety, but I see it as a good thing. It drives me every day. I have to keep it in check, obviously. If something bad does happen, I just can't let it get to me. So just learning to be tough in that sense and not give up.
And Carrie, I guess looking forward, what is your vision for your career and your business over the next 5 years?
It's funny that you asked me that. I've really been trying to figure this out. So I have two answers, and maybe we can talk in 5 years and see what happens. But I'm leaning towards trying to build a team, and that's hard to do, I'm finding, in a rural area where your average sales price is not really high, and there's just so much and so many different types of property. So, there might be a $19,000 mobile home next to the $1 million mansion, literally, on a county road, and both are really hard to sell. So we don't have neighborhoods here of 5,000 homes that are all 200 to 250. And so it's just a very different way of selling real estate. And you really have to sell a lot of units to make a living. So looking at building a team, I would love to kind of pass along everything I've learned and help other people grow and be successful. Or if that doesn't work out, because I do tend to be a little bit of a control freak, I think you have to be in this business, but just streamlining my tasks, my to-do list, my processes, my operations. To me, the more you can streamline and make seamless your processes, the better service your customers are going to have. If you can set expectations really well so they always know what's coming, then I think you can offer just a better level of service, and that's really always my goal. So either one, build a team or streamline my processes.
And I guess kind of on top of that, what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself as a real estate professional so that you can have continual growth?
Continued branding is very, very important. You've got to establish yourself as a professional that has a lot of knowledge that is valuable. And how you do that, in my opinion, is a couple different types of media, whether that's print or billboard or newsletter. I have done and still do all three, but the newsletter to me is important, and not just a blanket newsletter with, homeowner tips, because anybody can get that anywhere, but people want information. Consumers are always very hungry for information, and so I believe empowering consumers with your local market information and being positive about real estate, what is selling, how it's selling, why it's selling, how can you sell, what do you need to look out for when you're buying. Those, to me, are the best ways to market yourself as a real estate professional. Anytime you send something out, anytime somebody meets you at the grocery store and asks you, that you always have knowledge to share with them that they can't just get online and find out necessarily.
And I think sometimes when the general public looks at real estate agents, sometimes I don't think they really understand the value that they provide, both from a buyer and a seller standpoint. What do you think the biggest misconception or myth that people have about working with a real estate agent?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's easy. I think people kind of look at it and think that it's almost as easy as walking into a convenience store and buying a candy bar, or setting up a lemonade stand on the roadside and selling, $1 lemonade or 25-cent lemonade. They think it's just this very unilateral transaction, and I can't even begin to tell you or adequately explain in the last 13 years how much tougher it keeps getting just to get somebody to the closing table and to actually close and fund. There are so many moving parts to one single home selling. It's unbelievable. And I'm actually working a transaction right now with a very sweet couple, and to me this is why I do what I do every day. But they are older and retired. he is having health trouble, stress-related and blood pressure-related, heart. And so they have a home with a couple acres, and that he just cannot maintain it anymore. And so they want to sell. Well, their neighbor happened to have a son that's of the age to buy, wanted to buy it. Great. They work out this transaction on their own. Pretty seamless, not too terrible, except his loan type was not a conventional 20% down loan. It was a first-time buyer loan product that always has hiccups and always takes a long time. And because nobody, no realtor, was working, arguing, calling, pushing on their behalf, we are 10 days past our closing date right now, and we're hoping we're going to close on Monday. Well, imagine the stress that my couple, because now they're going to be my buyers, I'm helping them buy a home, that they're going through, because we didn't have any answers of this, even though I was trying to make calls and get involved. But you can imagine with privacy policy, nobody wants to talk to me. I don't have an interest in that transaction, for that buyer buying their home. So it just takes so much, and I felt bad for my client the other day. She's my buyer, but she is selling her house to this guy, and she said, now where is our closing going to take place? And she was talking about the closing of her sale. She had no idea what title company. We use title companies to close in Texas. And I was kind of like, I don't know, I can find out for you. But, just they have no knowledge. They have nobody rooting for them. They have nobody putting the pieces together. And unfortunately, in this transaction, it is affecting 2 other families because they haven't been able to purchase their house. And then that family hasn't been able to drive an hour and a half and purchase their home for their new job they got relocated for. And then there's also a seller on that side that's waiting and has been affected. So, and that's often the case in real estate. There's always what I call a domino, where somebody's got to close on this one, so somebody can go close on that one. And so this is a 4-home, 4 families that are being affected by this domino. And myself, I'm only actually involved in getting paid for one of these sales, one of these transactions, but I have been helping on 3 of them, calling as many people as would talk to me to make it all happen. And now finally this other realtor, that's the 4th one, has called me, and he and I have been working on the 4th one essentially to get them all closed. So I think people just misconstrue and think that it's easy, and then I think there's a misconception too that we make a lot of money. If the commission rate's 6% or 7 or 4 or whatever it is in your area, that we walk home with that full 6%, and we do not, at all, of course.
Yeah, that's crazy to everything have to go, like you said, with all the different parties, and they're holding, like you said, they're holding up the whole process. You're trying to just do your job and take care of your clients, but then you got all these other factors that you have no control over that are totally complicating the matter altogether.
Yeah, and the way I work is like what I mentioned earlier, being a control freak. So I'm the type of realtor that I am literally a puppeteer. I'm going to have my hand in every single aspect. I'm talking with title. I'm talking with the lender. I don't even like to use lenders that I've never worked with and that don't have a proven track record to get something to closing when they say they're going to. I'm ordering the survey. I'm checking in with the surveyor. I'm double checking with whoever got the appraisal. When is it coming? When is it due? So there's all these aspects. And when I'm involved, I consider it my job to make sure all of that happens, because there's really not anybody else in that transaction that's going to do it. The title company isn't calling the bank or the surveyor going, hey, when are you going to get your stuff turned in? So that's the greatest value that we have, is we actually make things happen.
And Carrie, let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend, and they're in another state, and they want to sell their home. Now, obviously, with your experience, and you could probably look up an agent, possibly do a referral for them, but from a general advice standpoint, what advice would you give them about selecting an agent that could best serve their needs?
I think there's probably 4 things I would say. I think you want a realtor that is full-time, that is what they do to make a living, because then they're obviously more invested and committed. Number two is, I would say they really need to live in the market area and serve the market area that you're looking at, especially if you're a younger family with kids and schools and activities are really important to you, or if you're maybe an older couple, semi-retired, retired, looking for, say, activities and those types of neighborhoods, communities, and offerings. So you really need somebody that is there that knows the lifestyle that you're seeking. Three, you want a realtor that is interested in you. You want somebody that asks you lots of questions about what do you need, what do you want, what do you like, what's important to you. Because my job as a buyer's agent, I consider, is not just what do you like. Do you want granite and neutral walls, or that really doesn't matter. Those things are cosmetic and they can be changed. I understand they're important in the process and in the budget, but at some point, no home when you're a buyer is perfect. And so you've got to be able to trust, and that's my number 4, you've got to trust this person. You've got to be able to let them take you through a bunch of homes, listen, because they've asked all these questions and they've listened to you, and then help you decide on the top 2 or 3 or 4 and help you kind of glean away what you really need for your lifestyle, not just what you think is pretty or what, say, maybe the man thinks is the least amount of work, right? Because we women will go in and say, oh, we want to do this and this and this, and I find that men, they start clicking off, the money, the budget, and the honey-do list. So, but a good realtor, a good buyer's realtor, should be able to help you at some point go, I've listened to y'all, and this one, as much as you may love where it is, the location, the home itself doesn't really fit everything you've told me that you need. So that would be for a buyer's realtor. As a listing realtor, you want someone that is caring, tenacious, full-time. All of those things are very important, but I recommend you get online and you look up their other listings. They need to have excellent photography, photos, nothing blurry, no real backlight in windows that causes glare, no dark photos. Photos are the most important thing when you are selling a home. And you can be online everywhere, but if your photos are bad and you don't have good descriptions and content that engages people, they will not want to come see your house.
Excellent. And Carrie, obviously you're based out of Sulphur Springs, the northeast Texas area. And if somebody's in that general area and they're looking for real estate services or an agent, what's the best way they can find out more information about you and how you can help them?
I have a website. It's liveeasttexas.net. That's probably the easiest. They can, of course, go on to Century 21 First Group, all spelled out, .com or century21.com and key in Sulphur Springs and my name, Carrie Nuckolls, and look for me. They could find me on Zillow. I'm a 5-star premier agent on there. I'm on Realtor.com. So hopefully if they just type in Carrie Nuckolls Real Estate, I should come up in a search if I've been doing everything the way I'm supposed to.
Excellent. Well, obviously, Carrie, we want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come here today and share all your professional real estate experience with our listeners. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about Carrie, obviously you can go to her site, like she said. Also below this interview, we'll have a link to her site and any other information we have so you can see how Carrie can help you with your real estate needs. So with that said, everybody, until our next show, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.